Good morning, first graders. Today we are going to read the last book in the Mercy Watson series with permission from Candlewick Press. The title is Mercy Watson, Something Wonky This Way Comes. It's written by Kate DiCamillo and it's illustrated by Chris Van Dusen. Chapter 1. Mr. Watson and Mrs. Watson have a pig named Mercy. Mr. Watson, Mrs. Watson, and Mercy lived together in a house at 54 Decawoo Drive. One Saturday afternoon, Mr. Watson said to Mrs. Watson, "My darling, my dear, there's a movie at the Bayou called When Pigs Fly." "When Pigs Fly," said Mrs. Watson. "What an inspiring title. Mercy, did you hear?" Mercy did not hear. Mercy did not hear because Mercy was not listening. "It says here that the Bayou proudly serves real butter," said Mr. Watson. "Oh my," said Mrs. Watson. "Real butter." Mercy prickled up her ears. She was listening now. Mercy loved butter. She particularly loved butter on hot toast, but she would take butter any way she could get it. "Yes," said Mr. Watson. "It says here that the Bayou proudly serves real butter on every bottomless bucket of popcorn." "Bottomless?" said Mrs. Watson. "Bottomless," said Mr. Watson, "which means all you can eat." "All you can eat?" said Mrs. Watson. What a delightful concept. Mercy thought that all you can eat was a very delightful concept. "Let's go to the movies," said Mrs. Watson. "Let's," said Mr. Watson. "Oink," said Mercy. Chapter 2. "Where are you going?" said Baby Lincoln. "We're off to the movies," said Mr. Watson. "Oh," said Baby. "What movie are you going to see?" "It is a movie called When Pigs Fly," said Mrs. Watson. "Is it a romance?" said Baby. "Is it a movie about love?" "Well," said Mrs. Watson, "I think it is basically a movie about pigs flying." "Don't be ridiculous," said Eugenia Lincoln. "Pigs don't fly. It's a figure of speech." "What's a figure of speech?" said Mr. Watson. "The movie title," said Eugenia, "is a figure of speech signifying the impossible." "Well," said Mrs. Watson, "we are going to be impossibly late if we don't get going." "Would you care to join us?" said Mr. Watson. "Yes," said Baby Lincoln. "Absolutely not," said Eugenia. "Oh, sister," said Baby, "please say yes." "No," said Eugenia, but she got into the Watsons' convertible anyway. "Where are you going?" shouted Stella. "We're off to the movies," said Mr. Watson. "What kind of movie are you going to see?" said Frank. "It's a romance," said Baby. "It will be inspirational," said Mrs. Watson. "It's a figure of speech," shouted Eugenia. "Is it a movie with a happy ending?" said Frank. "Oh, it must end happily," said Mrs. Watson. "Can we come too?" said Stella. "The more the merrier," said Mr. Watson. Chapter 3. Police Officer DiCamillo had the night off. Officer DiCamillo was at the Bayou Drive-In. He was with his wife, Mrs. Officer DiCamillo. They were in the front row. "Is it nice to have a night off from the relentless duties of keeping the world safe from crime?" Officer DiCamillo asked herself. "It is nice," he answered himself. "It is very nice." Mrs. Officer DiCamillo smiled, and Mrs. Officer DiCamillo patted Officer DiCamillo's arm. Animal Control Officer Francine Paulette was at the Bayou Drive-In too. Animal Control Officer Francine Paulette was with Fred P. Dumpkins. Alfred P. Tompkins and Francine Paulette were on a date. "Do you think that there will be actual pigs in this movie?" said Francine Paulette. "I'm not certain," said Alfred P. Tompkins. "As an animal control officer," said Francine Paulette, "I have found pigs to be the williest clients of all." "Really?" said Fred. "Absolutely," said Francine. "Although I did catch a pig once, at least. I think I caught a pig." "Fascinating," said Alfred P. Tompkins. "Simply fascinating." He put his arm around Francine Paulette. Chapter 4. Leroy Ninker was a small man with a big dream. Leroy Ninker wanted to become a cowboy. But for now, Leroy was working at the Bayou Drive-In concession stand. Leroy Ninker was selling bottomless buckets of popcorn. "Yippee-yi-yo!" he shouted. There's nothing fake. That's right, it's real butter. Folks, top quality, bottomless, and out of this world. Yippee-yi-yo! In between pouring butter and popping popcorn, Leroy Ninker worked on his lasso skills. He twirled the lasso. He made the lasso whistle. He lassoed a bottomless bucket. He lassoed a stool. "Yippee-yi-yo!" sang Leroy. "There's nothing fake about my skill with a lasso." Chapter 5. The Watson convertible pulled up to the Bayou ticket window. "Help you?" said ticket seller Beatrice Lipoloni. "We are here to see when pigs fly," said Mr. Watson. Beatrice Lipoloni took her glasses off. She put her glasses back on. She blinked. Pardon me and all," said Beatrice Lipoloni, "but I'm seeing things kind of wonky. Is that a pig in the back seat of your vehicle?" "Her name is Mercy," said Mrs. Watson. "She is our darling and our dear," said Mrs. Watson. "I'm not sure pigs are allowed at the bayou," said Beatrice Lipoloni. "Actually," said Mr. Watson, "she is a porcine wonder. Do you allow porcine wonders?" "Porcine wonders?" said Beatrice Lipoloni. "Yes," said Mrs. Watson. Beatrice Lipoloni blinked. "I don't think there are any rules against porcine wonders," she said. "Excellent," said Mr. Watson. "Good evening to you, then." Beatrice Lipoloni blinked again. She adjusted her glasses. "Wonky," said Beatrice Lipoloni. "Wonky in the extreme." Chapter 6. Mercy put her snout up in the air. She sniffed. There was a wonderful smell. There was an incredible smell. The wonderful, incredible smell was everywhere. And the wonderful, incredible smell was butter. Mr. Watson said, "I think it's time for a bottomless bucket. Frank, why don't you and I go and get some treats for the ladies?" At the concession stand, the little man behind the counter said, "Yippee-yi-yo! What do you know?" "Hey," said Mr. Watson, "you're the man who robbed us." "Robbed you?" said Frank. "Yes," said Mr. Watson. "He tried to take our toaster." "My name is Leroy Ninker," said the little man. "You're a thief," said Frank. "Reformed," said Leroy Ninker. "I'm a reformed thief studying to be a cowboy." "Well, good for you, Mr. Ninker," said Mr. Watson. "We will like several bottomless buckets." "Butter on those buckets?" said Leroy. "We would like a great deal of butter on those buckets," said Mr. Watson. "Yip-yi-yo," said Leroy. "That's the way we go." Chapter 7. The smell of butter was absolutely everywhere. The smell of butter was driving Mercy wild. Where was the butter smell coming from? Mercy thought she would go and investigate. She leaped out of the convertible, and she leaped with purpose. Was there anything more heavenly than being hot on the trail of a true butter smell? Mercy did not think so. She trotted faster. Mercy Watson was a pig on a mission. Chapter 8. Hey now, said Alfred P. Tompkins. Speaking of pigs, isn't that a pig right there? Where? Said Francine Paulette. There, said Alfred P. Tompkins. He pointed at the pig that was trotting past the truck. The pig had its snout up in the air. The pig looked very happy. That, said Francine Paulette, is the pig from Deckblue Drive. I have dealt with that pig before. I wonder what a pig is doing at the movies, said Alfred P. Tompkins. That's a good question, said Francine. That's the kind of question that only an animal control officer can answer. Fascinating, said Alfred P. Tompkins. Don't make any sudden movements, said Francine Paulette. She reached into the back of her truck. She grabbed her net. If you want to see an animal control officer in action, said Francine Paulette, follow me. Fascinating, said Alfred P. Tompkins. Simply fascinating. I'm right behind you. And this is where we'll stop today. We'll read the rest tomorrow. I hope you have a good day and I get to see you later on Google Meet. Bye.